Welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast, the number one source for news, analysis, and discussion on the Detroit Red Wings, the NHL, and all things hockey. Here are your hosts, Ryan Hanna, Brad Crisco, and Evan Lopsinger.
We heard the feedback when we got to the new studio, and everyone kept saying, you need to put stuff on the walls. Believe it or not, it was in our plans the entire time. It just takes a little bit of time and money and getting some professionals in to install and sound treat and everything. So it's still a home studio. It takes a little bit of work to get this up to hopefully pro grade. So with any luck, the sound on the Winged Wheel Podcast is now better for you. And for those watching on YouTube, the looks are now better for you as well. So everything you see up on the walls around us, we're going to be changing that out and swapping things in and out, moving them around. You're going to see new items. We are now able to display the mountains of memorabilia and stuff that we've collected and it's been sent to us very kindly over the years too. So excited to kind of work with this. We could probably, make a little pillow dummy and then hang a picture of Evan's head right where he is as well and see how long it takes people to notice.
That'd be great. Hey, we didn't do... Where's the pillow? Oh, I guess we don't have to do a pillow check today. We're good.
Pillow's gone, yeah. Jeez. We had to get something wrong. It's the off season. You guys like it? Vibes good?
Nothing's upside down on the wall, so we're doing good.
Oh, the vertical panels are all upside down. Believe it or not, just no way to notice.
Yeah.
All right, we'll do a reveal. We'll post it online soon, but if you want, go check us out on YouTube. Subscribe while you're there. New studio coming into fruition finally. Shout out to Mel for putting this all together. This was her vision. She would just kind of say things and I'd be like, yeah, I trust you.
Yeah, it sounds great.
Yeah.
Like, do you know what I said? Absolutely not.
You sound confident. That's better than I can do. All right, folks, it's the off season. Welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast, here to talk to you about all things Detroit Red Wings hockey, the world of the NHL, and lots more in our brand new updated home studio. I'm one of your hosts, Ryan Hanna.
I'm Brad Crisco.
And I'm Evan.
On this episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast, we are going to be jumping into a topic that we've kind of saved, which is our rankings of the Detroit Red Wings prospect system. It's going to be tough, actually. We were talking pre-recording, so we'll see where we have those arbitrary rankings, but also discussions on, what are the strengths, weaknesses of the pipeline, how far away these guys are, what the rankings might mean in terms of the kind of player they could turn into. Hopefully some debate out of that and more. Some other small Red Wings notes, league news as far as ideas for expanded playoffs keep happening. So we're finally going to get into that discussion today to see where we're all at on that and whatever other notes before we jump into your questions and comments for overtime. Before all that, very quickly, the Winged Wheel Podcast is primarily supported by Patreon supporters, patreon.com/wingedwheelpodcast. If you want to support the show, you get access to benefits like our bonus overtime episodes, which record right after these main ones. We let loose, we have fun, we tell stories, you get thoughts with Evan, you get bloopers, answer any questions that didn't make the main show. It's a good time. You also get access to our Patreon exclusive Discord, and you're automatically entered into all of our giveaways. In season, we give away 2 tickets to every Detroit Red Wings home game. And in the off season, we have plenty coming to our Patreon supporters as well. Another off season benefit is our bonus off season episodes. They're a little bit more evergreen, a little bit of a different style than the more newsy kind of moment in time episodes that we record regularly. We are going to give our patrons a double dose this week because we were supposed to give you one last week, but the studio upgrades were just taking so much time and effort. So we have to catch up on one, but you're going to get twice this week. So our midweek episodes that we usually record in season, for the off season, the patrons still get a second dose of the Winged Wheel Podcast. So again, patreon.com/Winged Wheel Podcast to help us out and allow us to do things like build a brand new nice Winged Wheel Podcast studio. Okay, before we get into the prospect rankings, actually, I think we should open by recognizing the FanDuel Sports Detroit broadcast crew, Ken Daniels, Mickey Redmond, that entire crew over there. They were voted yet again the number one broadcast crew in the NHL across all markets as per the Athletics poll that they put out every year. That is, I believe, back-to-back titles for them, multiple times atop those rankings. So congrats to Ken and Mick and that entire broadcast team. It's not a surprise to anyone. I think Red Wings fans are spoiled by the quality of broadcasting that we get as Red Wings and Detroit sports fans, and Ken and Mick being recognized, and not just them as well. I mean, shout out to that entire FanDuel Sports Detroit crew, Ken, Mick, and the entire team.
It's going to look a lot different coming into the next season, right? Because you got Keating retired, very well deserved, had a great send off, happy for him doing the next thing there. You're going to be missing Trevor as well. Like, he was a big part of that broadcast and brought great energy and just a great guy. So, it's going to look a little bit different next year, but with Ozzy and Danny DeKeyser stepping in and really finding their form, they'll be in a good spot, but it will be different. But for the past year, they're the best in the biz.
Daniela Bruce, I believe, also doing a bit more on the broadcast too, which Daniela, a friend of the show. We're due to have her on again, but yeah, it was a bittersweet send-off for Keats, and I think we all hope to see Trevor Thompson back on the air. That's a guy who should be on the air, and that'll be a loss for Red Wings fans to not see him. But again, Ken, Mick, pound for pound, I think the best broadcasting duo in pro sports right now. All right. Red Wings news, there is none, which leaves us an opening to talk about Red Wings prospects. We saved this until after the draft intentionally, and let's get a bearing as to what the Red Wings prospect rankings are in our minds, because it's kind of crowded now. Like, we're going to go to 15 we said before we started recording. There's going to be guys left off here who very justifiably could be in a lot of people's top 10s. So the way we'll do this is we'll kind of go through each slot. Each of us will give our first, our second, our third, all the way through 15 or so. And we're obviously going to leave out, like, Kasper's not a prospect anymore. Soderblom's not a prospect anymore. And we'll kind of, it'll be a mix of how we view the prospect's overall ceiling and likelihood of making it. So it's going to be a combo of everything, which means there's going to be some variation in terms of, how you rank guys like Buium and Wallinder versus a guy like Buchelnikov or Finney or whatever it may be. So curious to see where things land. Before we get into that, though, I think let's talk overall trends on the prospect pool. Is it still one of the higher end prospect pools in the league in your mind, and where are the strengths and weaknesses for you?
It's interesting you use the word higher end, because I think that's the weakness. This is probably the deepest prospect pool in the NHL. We're going to go through 15. And you could probably even go further than that, of guys who legitimately have a chance to be NHL regulars. Not all going to happen in Detroit because there's not that many spots. Some of these guys that we're really high on are going to bust. Some of the guys further down the list that we're ranking too low are going to explode. It always happens, but not many teams can go that far. The problem is, I don't know if there is a skater in the system that you can project as a first line or first pair guy, which is an issue considering the main roster outside of Sider, first pair lefty is a question mark, unless they just put Edvinsson there and sacrifice down the lineup. We've been talking about that first line left wing forever. Does not look like there are any internal solutions to either of those problems. So despite the depth and despite there being a lot of second line, second, third, fourth D men possibilities in the system, the high end is lacking a little bit.
I think the high end potential superstar, game breaker, near on franchise player better is lacking, but it'd be an interesting exercise to see how many franchises across the NHL are lacking in that regard. I think the Red Wings have one or two guys. I think Sandin Pellikka is going to be the guy that probably most people identify as having the highest end ability. Could he be a first pair guy? If you remove the thought of who he has to compete with on the first pair, maybe. And I think there are a few different guys that I look at, or at least a couple, where I'm like, that very well could be the first line left wing solution. It's just not a bolt on, like he was drafted from the moment he was picked as a first line winger. It's the kind of guy where you're like, okay, if everything goes well, I could see him fitting in on the first line. Does that make sense? It's like,
to a degree, yeah. Because theoretically, every single guy we're going to talk about has first line potential. It's just some guys have a 0.5% chance of hitting that. Other guys might have a 30% chance of hitting that. You know, we saw it with a guy like Rasmussen. He was an awful skater coming out of the draft, and that's a skill he developed. It changed his outlook. Buchelnikov and his playmaking, it changed his outlook. That is true for all these guys. And just because, you know, there's nobody here that I project to play on the top line, top pair, doesn't mean they won't end up playing on that top line. In 2 years from now, if the Red Wings have this exact same problem, nobody's going to bat an eye if Carter Bear's playing in that spot. Doesn't mean he's one of the 3 best forwards on the team, but coaches like to balance their lineup. If you put Carter Bear and Alex DeBrincat on the same team, who's a better player? Alex DeBrincat. But as of now, DeBrincat's playing on the second line for balance. So it's not to say these guys won't ever fill in those roles. It's just like a way to quantify what their ceiling is.
In terms of like being a fulsome prospect pool, though, I think that's where the Red Wings prospect pool overall is higher end. Like there are some bare cupboards out there. And that's, I mean, it's a combination of two things. One, I think the Red Wings have done by and large reasonably well, if not very well, in terms of making the most of the first round picks they've been given so far. I mean, there's statistically speaking, we are going to see at least a bust or two for how long the Red Wings have been drafting with decent picks in the first round, but they've drafted well and made the most, and very few players have kind of petered out of there early. And second, it's the volume of high-end picks that they've had. No lottery picks. I mean, the Raymond pick was as high as they got, and thankfully they made absolutely the most out of that one. But other than that, like there's not, you know, a first overall, a second overall, a third overall in there, or definitely not multiple like other teams have had, but they've still had a lot of first round picks. And so the fact that most of those have been stuck so far, or they have stuck in the organization and they've been making use of them and they're moving along the pipeline to varying degrees of speed, that's why the Red Wings still have one of the better prospect pools. So part of it is just circumstance and part of it is amateur scouting doing well in that regard, but they are, in my mind, closer to the top of the league still. On that note, why don't we start out with the rankings, and we'll start with first and move our way down. Evan, you lead us off. In your mind, who is the number one overall prospect for the Detroit Red Wings?
Well, I think it's pretty easy. I think this is an objective take, and I think, in my opinion, or what I think objectively is true, is it's Axel Sandin Pellikka. I think he's got the highest ceiling. I think he's, you know, at the end of this previous season for all the prospects is on the highest trajectory upward, had the most successful season, and he fills a direct position of need. For me, he's number one.
Yeah, it's not a hot take at this point. It does already raise an interesting conversation, which is NHL readiness versus high ceiling and how you rank it. But to me, I agree. I think ASP has, from the time he's been drafted to now, just demonstrated why he's one of the best prospects outside of the NHL and is one of the most interesting prospects. The range of outcomes is large, but I mean, a successful one could be hugely impactful for this franchise. A right shot, incredibly gifted offensive defenseman who, despite not being a big guy, does not shy away from playing a kind of physical game. I'm not going to call him a physical defenseman, but he's not like a twerp out there who just gets bullied around. He also does have the benefit of the doubt, and he hasn't played in the AHL for much time yet, and so you can't really hold too much against him, but this season is going to really impact it. Like I don't want to say he's been sheltered. He's been playing in the SHL and doing phenomenally. That's a pro league against men. But at the same time, things change once you get to the North American ice, and a lot of prospects' stock temporarily or permanently does dip if they struggle to transition, which is a very normal thing to do. So ASP right now it's a mixture of him being a very gifted prospect, and it's a lot of mystery box with him. So I think it is the objective correct take, Evan, to have him at number one overall, but I wonder where we'll be in a year. Because I don't think he's NHL ready right now.
No, he's not. And when you do your projections, the timeline doesn't matter. If a guy makes the league next year or 3 years from now, doesn't really impact it. To me, it's a ceiling conversation. And yeah, ASP's got the highest ceiling potential. Is he a little less likely to hit what his ceiling is than a Danielson or an MBN just because of the more translatable skills? Sure. You can make that argument, but Sandin Pellikka has the possibility of being a high-impact offensive defenseman in the NHL who you can at least trust at 5-on-5. He'll never be a shutdown guy, but that's what you have Seider and Edvinsson for. You don't need him to be that.
There's a lot of questions of why do you not talk more about Sandin Pellikka potentially on the Red Wings next season. And I'll lead it off with saying he's not ruled out. By all means, he can come in and completely surprise everyone at camp. We've seen it a couple times already, and the Red Wings are thin behind Seider on the right side. So they would love if a solution came there sooner rather than later. They don't want to have to run back Justin Hall. They don't want to have to rely on Bernard Docker being much better than anticipated. Like, of course the Red Wings don't want to do those things. But you don't sacrifice Sandin Pellikka's development, especially at a position where it's really hard to jump into the pro game and be successful. Not that it's easy to be a forward in the NHL as a rookie, but defensemen just get bullied physically in a way that you've never been in your career to date. The game moves so much quicker. You're asked to do so much more. You're playing opponents far, far tougher than you ever have. And so much lays on your stick. You're often the last line of defense before the goalie. And so the mistakes are kind of amplified as a defenseman. The number is 200 or 300 games for a defenseman, it's theorized, before they really find their footing and think the game at the NHL level. So you rush a guy in when he's just now getting to North American ice. You don't do that unless he gives you every reason in the world to. So that's why we don't force the issue with Sandin Pellikka. Could happen, it's just not likely. All right, second on your list. Brad, you lead us off.
I'm going to go with Nate Danielson. He's the closest to doing it. We've seen him do it at the second highest level of hockey. The offensive production isn't going to be what it is for, I think, some of the players that I have behind him on this list, but just the minutes he played in Grand Rapids, the matchups he took, the role he took at such a young age, and still put up similar numbers to what Kasper did in the same situation, makes me believe that he still is more likely than not to be a second-line caliber center in the NHL, which is hard to find. I do want to see a bit more offense to his game. I do want to see him push in that department a little more. There's times he can still be too deferential, but there's not a lot of weakness to his game, and there's strength in that. And it's a boring answer because, you see the sizzle and the pop with an ASP, and you don't see that with Danielson. But how many guys are effective top 6 centers in the NHL that have a profile like that? There's a lot. They don't wow you when you watch them, but they play an effective, clean, 200-foot game. And there's nothing we've seen from Danielson to this point in his career that makes you think he's not going to do that at the NHL level.
I have Nate Danielson as well, number 2. A lot of the reasons Brad stated. I think at this point, NHL readiness does factor in a little bit here, that I think he's pretty close. He could do it out of this camp. He still has to. It's not a given, but he could do it. I generally agree with everything that you stated, Brad. I think his season was a little bit looked down on just for the reasons that Brad said. He was asked to take on a ton, even more difficult than what Kasper did. And Kasper was asked to take on a ton. Dan Watson told us, that the head coach of the Griffins, when he was on the podcast, it's easy to overlook Danielson, but there's not a role in this team that he is, skipping over. He is asked to be a master of all trades for the Griffins, and that's an exceptionally tough thing, and he's acquitted himself well. So I think I couldn't put Danielson down further on this list if I tried, and I'm not really inspired to regardless. There's no one really jumping ahead of him. That's, to me, almost as much of a lock as ASP.
I have Carter Barrett number 2.
There you go. I was hoping that would lead into that.
I get what you guys are saying, and watching enough Griffins games last year, it may not be sexy, but when you watch someone of his age play a pro-style centerman game, that's unfortunately exciting. Because he was thrust into a role that I think was what we perceived as more than what he could handle. And I think he did an extremely admirable job. I think if Grand Rapids gets a little bit more firepower around him, I think the point totals start to go up. And he had an outside shot of making the Red Wings last year. Like, he was one of the standouts in camp. So I think he's right there. But if we're talking overall ceiling, and I think Danielson playing 1A, 1B type center at the NHL level is exactly what the doctor ordered for Detroit. For me, I think Carter Bear is number 2 because it plays left wing. He fills that position of need. Mind you, it's going to be in 2 to 3 years, so things can change in that time frame. But if I'm doing it right now, I like the production from Carter Bear out in the WHL last season. Now he can go back, knock on wood, injury-free, 100% health, and just go dominate the WHL. And so when we do this again next year, if he doesn't have that pop-off season, my rankings will obviously be changed. But I think right now, if we're talking about overall ceiling, I think Carter Bear is number 2.
That's where you got to factor it in, because I do agree. I think Bear's ceiling is higher, but seeing Danielson do it at the AHL level does mean something for me in these rankings, because, kids coming out of junior, I agree. I think Bear's going to pop in the NHL, but that degree of, well, we don't know for sure yet, especially coming back from the Achilles injury, is still big enough that it's a separator for me. Obviously, if Evan's right and he goes back to the WHL and maybe it makes Team Canada at the World Juniors, whatever, and has a huge season, even if Danielson's in the NHL, you could maybe comfortably project Bear ahead of him just because of the ceiling argument. But he's fresh off the draft, fresh off an injury, hasn't done anything at the pro level. We haven't seen him at anything like the World Junior level. So there's still enough question marks for me to keep him behind Danielson. But yeah, the overall point of Bear's ceiling is higher, I agree with.
It's tough too, right? Because we have more data points on some of these guys than the other ones. So it's certainly not science. It feels like there's a little bit of art going on here. But if we're talking about potential ceiling and adding some subjectivity, it's tough in this rank because I think there's quite a few guys who could go number 2.
So I actually don't have Bear 3rd. For the last point that Brad said, like, there's a little bit more data on my 3rd ranked guy, which is MBN, Michael Brandsegg-Nygard. And I say this because I feel like I have to stick to what I said around the draft, which is I don't know necessarily that I can put Bear ahead of him yet, although my expectation is that he will, or he should be able to, surpass MBN in these rankings. And I say that without disagreeing with what either of you just said in terms of what Carter Bear is and can be. But my point with Michael Brandsegg-Nygard is there's a little bit more of a body of work. Now, his season over in Europe wasn't lights out. Like, it had some people questioning, okay, is this just a slower season? But he really finished his year out well and impressed people, not just, in the SHL, but also internationally. And I think with MBN, I still am seeing the player that the Red Wings drafted, and his ceiling is just as high to me. And he's one of at least a few guys on the Red Wings whose, stock is almost buoyed by the fact that we saw Marco Kasper do what he did. And so to add the kind of guy who can dip into the offensive talent with his absolutely phenomenal shot, but still add the kind of bowling ball in your face, like hard-nosed kind of game as well. I like that with MBN, and it still has him at 3rd for me, although my full expectation is that within a year or two, Carter Bear is going to be much higher in terms of how he's regarded, because I think he can do more and in a lot of ways better in most areas except for the shot, which I would still hand to MBN. So it's tight. I'm just trying to stick to what I said earlier.
Sometimes data points work the other way, though. Like you mentioned, he didn't have a strong season in the SHL. Now, he had a very strong finish. He had a good playoff, good world championship, good brief showing in Grand Rapids, but those are all relatively small sample sizes.
Yeah, there's recency bias going on for me for sure.
Yeah, and the larger picture of the whole season wasn't bad, but it left a lot to be desired. And I know it's impossible to compare Canadian junior prospects to Europe prospects who take very different paths and usually end up in pro. Carter Bear was dominant offensively in the WHL last year. We've never really seen that from NBN at any level, at least not any serious level. He's been good. He's been productive, but he hasn't been, amongst the league leaders in goals or anything like that. Again, different paths, but even watching him, if you just go by, screw the data points, the eye test, he's never been that guy. He's the Nate Danielson of wingers, where you love the all-around game, you love the compete, you love the detail, you love the pro style of the game. But if we're talking ceiling, Bears is definitely higher than NBN's.
Yeah, I agree. I do agree.
It's definitely higher than NBN's. And unlike Danielson, where a lot of the data points we collected this year were check for Danielson, NBN was a little more mixed. So for me, I'm still big on NBN and I still love the prospect, but that's why I have Bear 3, NBN 4, is just because the unknowns, plural, of Bear in this scenario actually play in his favor compared to some of the knowns we have with NBN.
Okay, so I have ASP, Danielson, NBN, then Bear, and Brad, you have that except swap. It goes Bear, then NBN. Evan, what's your third and fourth?
My third is Nate Danielson for all things you guys said, and he is a centerman, so I can't put anyone above that. After that, I'm going Sebastian Cossa.
Oh.
And I know people are going to have the conversation about, well, we also have Trey Augustine. Well, I'm talking about the prospects in themselves. And I think him and Trey Augustine both have exceptionally high ceilings, but for different reasons. The reason why I put Sebastian Cossa ahead of Augustine is, he's playing a level higher. We have a little bit more data, and in another season, I could be completely wrong and switch it up again. But if we're talking about overall ceilings and a position of need, Sebastian Cossa has to be up there. We saw him win in his debut in the NHL this year. I struggle to see any other prospects that I could really put higher than that.
Cossa for me is an interesting one. He's in a weird spot. Full disclosure here, he's right behind Bear. So Bear 4 for me, almost neck and neck with NBN at 3, and then I have Cossa at 5. And I think you have to put him there in my mind. I agree with what you said, although I think you also have to recognize he had a tough latter part of the season. The whole Grand Rapids Griffins team did, but it's almost like, his initial stint in Grand Rapids, like as he was getting warmed up to the league, much like his ECHL time, like it took some time, but as he ramped up and had a great season, it seemed like he was dominant up through the early part of last season. And then around Christmas time or so, January, February, the Griffins just fell off, and Cossa was part of that too. And he did not have especially the end of the season that he wanted, the Griffins wanted, or the Red Wings wanted, to the point where Steve Yzerman now is saying quite confidently, when he doesn't really predict too much or say things definitively, yeah, it looks like Cossa is going to need more time unless he comes in and has a phenomenal camp. So I still have Cossa at number 5, but I think that spot is not rock solid in my mind.
Yeah, I have Cossa at 5 as well. Again, talking about sample sizes, he had a rough finish, but he did more good than bad last season at the pro level as a starter in the AHL. His first year as a starter. Even the year before that, there was a lot of good. Again, albeit more inconsistent, but there was a lot of good. He has at least shown that at the AHL level, he is capable of being an upper echelon goalie. Doesn't always translate to upper echelon NHL goalie, but he's shown it. The problem with ranking him, he's a goalie. And you want to talk about percentage of ceiling versus percentage of basement? Schrodinger's rankings, both are happening at the same time.
There's not a goalie prospect in the world who's completely free of bust potential until they are a lock-on starter for a team.
And even then, until he is actually, we're counting and tallying his Vezina votes, there is the chance it's going to go off the rails. So you always have to keep that in the back of your mind. But he's got the tools. He's got pro games under his belt. every goalie's development path is different, so I don't really buy into the whole, well, he's still in the AHL. Listen, there's enough data points with goaltending development to know there is no definitive pattern. So I'm not super worried about that. And again, it's a mental game. And that's the issue with Cossa, is he's still figuring out how to be that guy for 50 to 60 games a year at this level, because there's no questioning the tools with him. When he is on, with his size, his speed, his reads, he is absolutely that dude. It's just, it doesn't show up more than 60 to 70% of the time over the course of a season, which is a problem for a starting goalie. But if he figures out that percentage, he rockets to number one on this list. Like, it's big of a thing with goalies.
Different style than Augustine as well, and we'll get into Augustine in our rankings too. And I think Kossa's come a long way in the specific areas of the net, like holding his crease and being a bit more steady and, controlling the puck and everything from the time where he came in, but he still has a ways to go. And a goalie showing up and being more consistently near his, higher end of his performance, it's a problem, but it's a pretty standard problem for young goalies to have. So Brad, you and I both have him at 5. Evan, who is your 5th?
Well, we may as well move into the next guy. Trey Augustine is who I have at 5, because I think the subtleties between them are so close. I think it would be unfair for me to say Augustine as a prospect is way lower because of this when would be speaking out of both sides of my mouth. I think Trey Augustine is maybe the best goalie prospect outside of the AHL right now. I think at one point this year, he didn't even lose consecutive games. He was one of the best goalies in the country. For all things I said about Cossa, I think I could say exactly the same thing for Augustine. And I think his ceiling could be even higher.
Could be. And he's like, Kossa's the traditional big, very athletic goalie. Trey Augustine's trying to kind of be the guy who beats the odds as a smaller goalie, but he is just like steady, solid, always where he needs to be, almost completely inverse of what Sebastian Cossa is as a prospect. So the Red Wings are spoiled that way in having both of them. But yeah, Trey Augustine right behind Cossa. Should they be grouped? Maybe, maybe not. But I think everyone tends to think about the goalies in that pair. So
nobody ever has a conversation about Red Wings prospect goalies and has one without the other.
Right.
No one ever talks solely about Cossa. They talk about Cossa and Augustine.
And Augustine, going back to MSU, he wants to try to win that title. And then we'll see like how he fares in the AHL, because I think a lot of his performances are going to be compared to how Cossa has done. And he's kind of, I don't want to say blessed with the lack of data points at the pro level yet, but that is in his favor so far, where we're more paying attention to his ceiling, while we just talked at length about what Kossa's deficiencies are. So not to say they don't exist with Augustine, he hasn't played at that high of a level yet. But I think, it could turn out where Augustine is the Red Wings starter of the future. So he's 6 for me.
He's 6 for me as well. But getting back to the same reasons we talked about Danielson, I think I apply it to Cossa and Augustine as well. Obviously, Kossa's had some down moments, but there's a lot of data points of him being a high-end goalie at the HL level for, in a lot of occasions, prolonged stretches. That's a tick in his favor. I don't think what Kossa's done in the AHL brings him down to Augustine's level. I think that's what keeps him above Augustine in the rankings, is because he's done it at a higher level. And the other thing that I have in Kossa's favor over Augustine is big. Like, Augustine has to beat the odds to be an NHL goalie. There are not a lot of goalies in the NHL today that look like him. Not to say he can't do it. Look at UC Saros is a thing. But he's got longer odds than Cossa does, because Cossa has the default setting you need to be a good NHL goalie, which is he fills the net. So I think we could be talking in 5 years, 1A, 1B. They're both on the Red Wings, and we're laughing about comparing them to each other because they're each playing 41 games a year. But I'm going to default to the guy who's done it at the higher level.
I still think there's a good chance that one of them is used in a trade package, because I think a lot of teams around the league would like to have the problem that the Red Wings have, which is even beyond just Cossa and Augustine. They're kind of spoiled in terms of their goalie pipeline. It is a Stark contrast to what it was in the past. All right, we're going to take a quick break to hear from the sponsors of the Winged Wheel podcast. More of our prospect rankings after this. It's the hockey offseason, which means we're in the thick of summer. That means vacations, long days, packed schedules. It also means less time cooking proper meals. If you're reaching for something quick and sacrificing nutrition, Tempo has your back. These are protein-packed meals ready in just 3 minutes, so you can stay fueled without giving up your free time or flavor. It might sound too good to be true, but trust us, it's not. The braised beef tomato ragu pasta was unreal, rich, filling, tasted homemade, and the Tuscan honey chicken, that one surprised us in the best way. Balanced, flavorful, and absolutely not what you'd expect from a microwave. Tempo updates their menu with over 20 different meals every week, so you're never stuck with the same thing twice. It's great whether you're tracking macros, avoiding takeout, or just trying to eat something better than stale crackers between back-to-back recordings. Everything shows up portioned, nutrient-rich, and made with ingredients that are high quality and make for a great meal. Real food that fits into real life. For a limited time, Tempo is offering our listeners 60% off your first box. Go to tempomeals.com/wingedwheel. That's tempomeals.com/wingedwheel for 60% off your first box. tempomeals.com/wingedwheel. Rules and restrictions may apply. Going online without ExpressVPN is like driving a car without insurance. You might be a great driver, but with all those lunatics out there, why take the risk? Public Wi-Fi at airports, hotels, and cafes might seem convenient, but it's a goldmine for hackers. Anyone on the same network can potentially grab your personal info, passwords, banking logins, credit card details, with nothing more than just some basic tools and a bit of time. That's why ExpressVPN stands out. Their encryption is serious. We're talking so strong it would take a hacker with a supercomputer over 1 billion years to crack it. It's also super simple to use. Open the app, hit one button, and you're protected. And it works across all your devices, phones, tablets, laptops, whatever you're using. We personally started using ExpressVPN because we wanted to watch a hockey game that wasn't being broadcast in our area. It was geo-blocked, and the only way to get to it was through some sketchy website. ExpressVPN gave us secure access to the game and peace of mind knowing our connection was locked down the entire time. Secure your online data today by visiting expressvpn.com/wingedwheel. That's expressvpn.com/wingedwheel to find out how you can get up to 4 extra months free. expressvpn.com/wingedwheel. Summer's hotter weather is finally here, and if you're already sweating the heat, don't let hair loss pile on too. If your hair's thinning faster than playoff hopes in March, Hims might be worth checking out for you. They provide access to personalized treatments so you can work toward thicker, fuller hair in just a few months. Hims offers convenient access to a range of prescription hair loss treatments with ingredients that work, including chews, oral medications, serums, and sprays. These aren't gimmicks. We're talking clinically proven ingredients which have been shown to help slow hair loss and promote regrowth in as little as 3 to 6 months. And the process is built for real life. You start by filling out an online intake form, no waiting rooms, no awkward conversations. A licensed medical provider reviews it, and if prescribed, your treatment ships right to your door. Everything's done 100% online and pricing is straightforward, starting at just $35 a month with no insurance required. It's simple, it's convenient, and it's helped a ton of guys feel more like themselves again. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/wingedwheel. That's HIMS.com/wingedwheel for personalized hair loss treatment options. hims.com/wingedwheel. Individual results may vary based on studies of topical and oral minoxidil and finasteride. Prescription required. See website for full details, restrictions, and important safety information. As we were on the break, I realized that we hung these jerseys and forgot to take the tags off this one. So I'm sure someone will have already notified of that. It has been rectified. Apologies. Evan, number 6, who do you have on your list?
This is where I start to get a little bit into a gray area on prospects in terms of someone at 6 could be a 10. It kind of gets into that, stage of the draft where anyone could go at this range.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, I've got MBN, all for the reasons you guys said. Didn't have a great start to the year, very modest point totals in the SHL, but as the year progressed, as he started to get rolling, things started to look a lot better. He was excellent on the World Championship. I liked what he did in his short stint with GR. I think if we talk ceiling, I don't think it's super high, but he could be that type of player who plays in your middle of your lineup for 10 plus seasons. So there's a lot of value there. I think there's guys we're going to name on the list who have higher ceilings, and that probably goes against what I've been sort of thinking about. But I think from an organizational perspective, he's in that sort of number 6 mix.
For me, my number 7, so getting into our 7th ranked prospect, I agree with Evan. We're very much in that range now where it's completely arbitrary. It's we're getting into the vibes-based calculations here. I initially had this guy at 8 and someone else at 7, but as I look at it, I think I have to put Carter Mazur at 7. And I mean, we might be thinking about this differently had he not gotten injured right off the hop with the Red Wings in that game last season. So I think that's a guy who provided that his offseason of, bulking and strengthening his body and getting ready for the pro game, which by all rights, he's gotten up to close to like 200 pounds. And Chris Draper's talked about how he's really kind of beefed up his frame to get ready for that pro game and be hopefully a little bit less prone to injury. Then is he your first line solution? Probably not, but he's a guy who can come in and just be the energy forward who still has offensive ability, who still has, more of a rounded out game. He doesn't want to be what the Red Wings lost to Tyler Bertuzzi, but it's not a terrible comparison in terms of the role he could play on the team. And that could end up being in the top 6. So I think Carter Mazur still holds that spot for me.
Yep. I love Carter Mazur as a prospect. I agree with all the points you made. Just the big knock on Carter Mazur is the best ability is availability. And that dude has not played a lot of hockey lately. So there's questions about, is that going to be a consistent thing? And how much has it set his development behind that he basically almost didn't play this year? So it's a bigger red flag for me than I think it is for others. And not to say he doesn't have a high ceiling, but he doesn't have such a high ceiling that I'm going to start putting guys with similar, if not higher ceilings behind him just because he's gotten closer and played an NHL game, kind of. So for me, my number 7 is actually Max Plante.
Oh, okay.
I just think the playmaking with him is special. I think what he was able to do as a freshman in the NCAA was remarkable. He was over a point per game on a strong team, made big plays in big games too. So it's not like he was just beating up on the weaker schools and stockpiling points that way. He was legit a gamer for Minnesota Duluth. And I don't factor this into my rankings. My rankings are just skill-based, ceiling-based, all the things we've talked about. But man, does he have the number one thing the Red Wings are missing right now. He is a playmaker through and through. Not that he's devoid of goal scoring. He had some big goals this year, but the Red Wings desperately need someone to play up or down the lineup in more of like a Nicholas Backstrom type role where put him with an MBN, put him with a Carter Bear, put him with a Kiiskinen, like put him with a shooter and let them go. And a lot of shooters, a lot of great shooters in the Red Wings system. And we're going to talk about probably all of them. Max Plante's a bit of a unicorn, though, on the other end of the spectrum.
Your number 7, Evan.
My number 7, Dmitri Buchelnikov. He was the only 50-plus point player in the KHL under the age of 22. If we're talking ceiling, he might be one of the highest guys on this list, but the floor is also infinitely the other direction as well. We may never even see him in Detroit, but if we're checking boxes, he played in one of the best leagues in the world and put up over 50 points last year and continues to refine his offensive game. I think for sure if he continues on this track, he's going to find some NHL time, and who knows what happens from there. I know there's a lot of uncertainty. He's still in the KHL. He hasn't played in North America yet, but by all rights, he's continuing to improve. So I think just based on ceiling alone, he would be at least number 7 for me.
I have Max Plante at my number 8, and I think you outlined it really well there, Brad. Really kind of slept on, and that's a guy who came back from injury in such a big way. Love what he could add to this pipeline. And just to get ahead of it, I'm going to do 2 rankings in a row here. Number 9, and not far behind the 2 guys ahead of him, Buchelnikov, for what Evan stated. Could rocket up the standings, rocket up this list if he makes it over, because it's always an if with the Russian prospects, and if his game translates to the North American ice. But I have a lot of faith in what this kid could do potentially for the Red Wings, and love the kind of star power that represents the higher end of outcomes for him. So Buchelnikov, I do generally think that he's going to make it over. He's constantly talked about, wanting to come and play in the NHL. And, he came over to Michigan last summer for workouts and was around the kind of Red Wings prospect space and was, it's not like he has to flee Russia to make it over here. He has come and he still is interested in coming. We got excited for that moment where when his team folded, it looked like he was going to maybe make it over for this season. But ideally, this is the last season away, and he's in the Red Wings system, either in Grand Rapids or Detroit the season after that. But yeah, that's Buchelnikov for me at number 9. So, Brad, you can jump in if it's those two guys for 8 and 9, or
yeah, I think we might have found a tier here.
Yeah.
I've got Buchelnikov 8 and Mazur 9.
Yeah,
for all the reasons outlined, especially with the ceiling on Buchelnikov. And yeah, again, just the way the pipeline shakes out, there's going to be tiers that just naturally evolve as more and more people do this.
So where are you at, Evan? 8?
At 8, I've got Amadeus Lombardi.
Okay.
He was almost a point per game player for the games he played this year in Grand Rapids. I think Dan Watson does wonders for his game. I think he is really rounding out his 200-foot game. Same conversation that I could have with Buchelnikov. The range of outcomes are all over the place, but he has that special skill. He's got that get your butt out of the seat type abilities from time to time. I think he just needs to continue to work on his game in GR, and he impressed in last season's preseason with the Red Wings. Another full year in GR, I think there's a good chance he makes the Red Wings.
Who do you have 9th?
At 9, we're getting into my lower ceiling, but vibe tier. But I think this guy's at the very, very top of that, and you guys already talked about it. It's Max Plante, like unbelievable playmaker. Hopefully he starts to, in a season or two into GR, and we start to have the same conversation about him and evaluation we're having with a lot of these other guys. But where he's at right now, I think he probably should have been a first-round pick in his draft. It'll be interesting to see how his development goes, but he's got that skill set the Red Wings are desperately looking for.
So my number 10 is Amadeus Lombardi, who Evan just talked about. And man, I could absolutely see this kid coming up and being a middle six winger or a productive depth forward or something for the Red Wings. I think the size concern is always going to be there. Not every player has to be big and, or if you're small, you have to look like Marty St. Louis, but it's a real thing that you have to be able to hang in the pro game physically. So he needs to be able to do that and do it healthy without being injured. So it's going to be a question mark until proven otherwise, but I have Lombardi 10. The talent is too undeniable to me.
At number 10, I guess I'm the one straying away here. I've got Jesse Kiiskinen.
Okay.
This is where the word translatability is going to come in a lot. And while I do agree Lombardi is a more talented player than Kiiskinen, I just think Kiiskinen's speed, aggressiveness, and shot is way more likely to translate to the NHL. We are definitely in the range of we are not talking about top 6, top 4 options anymore. Sure, one of these guys could beat the odds. Absolutely, one of these guys could beat the odds. But when you look at a lot of great teams in the NHL, there's a guy that looks an awful lot like Jesse Kiiskinen on their 3rd, 4th line, shoveling in 15 to 20 goals, being an absolute menace on the penalty kill, being an absolute menace on the forecheck. And he looks like he can do that well at the NHL level. He's done it at the top level of the Finnish Liga. He had an exceptional showing at the World Juniors. Like, the guy stepped up to every task that has been put in front of him at high levels. Not to say Lombardi hasn't. He absolutely has. But I just think with the way they play, the styles they play, and where they've played, Kiiskinen right now looks like a better bet.
Evan, your number 10.
You guys have already talked about him, Carter Mazur. I think it would be a remiss to not include him in the top 10. Obviously, he needs to remain healthy, and by all rights, it sounds like he's become a professional eater this offseason, so the ball is really in his court and how the rest of his career plays out. Does he make the Red Wings? Does he stay in GR? It's all range of outcomes are there for him, but I don't see why I couldn't include him in my top 10.
All right. And to round this out, what we're each going to do is we're just going to give our 11 through 15 or so and just kind of give an overall, without a deep dive into every single player, an overall, view into why the ranking is in that order and what to look for the players. But at this point, the vibes are with a capital V. So I'll start us off. I have Kiiskinen at 11. Emmett Finney at number 12. To me, you just can't deny the fact that despite being a 7th round pick, he has been, a force for a late value prospect. And I love the kind of way he plays. I could see him being a bolt-on depth player for the Red Wings if it continues to go well.
Hold on before we get into the next one. I just got to point out here that all of us agreed ASP number 1. We are now going into noted defenseman Ryan Hanna's 12th, 13th rank here? Yeah. He hasn't mentioned another defenseman yet. Hasn't even mentioned them. Not an honorable mention, not a thought.
You stopped me at the exact right time.
I know. I figured it was coming, but I had to point out that if anybody wants to know where the weakness in the Red Wings system is here, that is your ultimate tell right now. The ultimate defenseman apologist is going into the teens without mentioning another defenseman.
This is a summer episode on being used as a pawn for Brad's forward propaganda and him catching strays. I can't even argue with your point. To my credit, my next 3 prospects are all defensemen. I have Wallinder and Buyam, and I'm going to be honest with you. I could see these guys being NHL defensemen, but I'm not sold on them being, confidently everyday NHL defensemen. I think if just one of them is, it's a huge win. And then how high up the lineup? Third pair is most likely for either of them. It's not their absolute ceiling. No, but they've kind of just been like the steady Eddie depth prospects who will probably be moved to the NHL just to see what you got at some point. Like that's their kind of overall archetype. I'm oversimplifying their games. They're different defensemen, but for the sake of time. And then a guy who I actually think I have too low, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's much higher next year, is Anton Johansson. I know there's Albert Johansson. I'm talking Anton Johansson. I think he's been described aptly as a sneaky good prospect in the Red Wings system. He's been coveted by other teams. I heard from sources that that's who Anaheim wanted in a potential trade in the past and before the Gibson deal actually got done, in addition to other, high-end picks. And the Red Wings really like Anton Johansson, and I think they're right too. And then just on the outside of that is the Genbergs, the Svercheks, etc. But Johansson rounds out my top 15.
All right. So if I kick off at 11, unlike Ryan, I'll kick my defensive party off sooner. I've got Buyam at 11. For defenseman, hockey IQ is the biggest thing for me, and I think he's got a bit more of that than Wallinder, despite Wallinder being a better skater. They're different defensemen, but in the same tier. Like I don't know if it's unreasonable to say their best case scenario is Albert Johansson. Like that's best case scenario, just because of the limitations they each have. So I've got Buyam at 11. I've got Wallinder at 12. I've got Lombardi at 13. Just again, the translatability for me is a huge, huge risk there. At 14, I agree with Anton Johansson. Big right shot defenseman who plays physical, can skate, what's not to like. And then at 15, I've got Eddie Genborg. So they drafted him in the 2nd round for a reason. I don't see the upside that they see, but I see for a lot of the same reasons as Kiiskinen. That guy who's going to play your 3rd, 4th line, being ultimate pain in the ass. Now, Kiiskinen's going to score more because of his shot. Genborg could be that Holmstrom role where he just is a menace around the crease and is able to smash in a ton of rebounds and get to the right spots at the right time. So I feel like I have to include him in my top 15.
Yeah, we're kind of going on vibes here, but Kiiskinen, I think for sure, he could very well be in my top 10, so I think he should be there. Then we start to get into Sverchek, Genborg, Emmett Finney, I think deserves to be in that list as well. A 7th round pick who's just sort of outpaced his draft position by a mile. And then you could put any of the defensemen you guys mentioned, Buyam, Wallinder, like those guys aren't gonna, wow me by any stretch of the imagination, but there's an outside chance that they're bottom pairing, number 5 type guys. Number 5 would be like above expectation, I think, for them. So that's sort of my, outside of Kiiskinen, the rest is kind of just like a tier of vibes and maybe lower ceiling type players, but could have a mainstay with the Red Wings.
Yeah, like when I did my list, I got all the way to 19 names. Actually, I bothered to write down and then had to trim 4. So that's kind of where this is going to sound harsh, interesting prospects end to me. So like I should point out that the 4 names I wrote down that didn't ultimately make the list were Finney, Prodl, Gylander, and Sverchek. So like anybody yelling, how could you leave out one of those guys? They're right there for me. Just when you make a list, you got to end it somewhere.
Yeah, I especially with the newest draft class, you just need to see, unless you're a guy like Carter Bear where all the focus has been on you and you've already kind of earned your status, you just need to see how the Prodls, the Svercheks, et cetera, are going to acquit themselves in the system after being drafted, and then the board shakes up.
I personally think it's a compliment to those guys who are just drafted. If you have a 2nd, 3rd, 4th round pick from this draft who's in your top 20 of your prospect pool, like that says something crazy about those players. Like there could be something there.
Yeah.
Well, it's also worth mentioning that if this was a Penguins podcast, Michael Sverchek would be number 2. So,
Yes.
God. Yeah. All right. That is our arbitrary middle of the offseason Detroit Red Wings prospect pool rankings. Let us know what you think, what we missed, what we messed up, what you agree on. Love to hear your thoughts. Some quick NHL discussion here. The thought of play-ins, a play-in tournament, expanding the playoffs, has been floated around. Gary Bettman has been on the record as saying he is against it. Gary Bettman has also been on the record as saying as long as he's commissioner, that you're never going to see a jersey ad on NHL sweaters, and here we are. But Bettman said he doesn't think it's necessary. Is a NBA or other league style play-in tournament where the 2 teams inside the playoff standings and the 2 teams outside the playoff standings play a little mini 3-game tournament at the end of the season to decide who actually gets in now, or if they expand to 34 potentially beyond teams, do you change your mind? Like, where are you at on the play-in tournament?
I think it's a necessity at this point. I think, who was it? So I think Drance was saying today online that like, it's concerning how uninteresting the last month of the NHL season is for a good sized chunk of the league for different reasons. Obviously a team who's sitting in the 6th seed, the gap between them and the 9-10 seed has been fairly sizable lately. And there's too many teams, like you get down to the 11th, 12th seeds, they're irrelevant by February. And that's not good for the league at all. And I'll hear a lot of arguments against the play-in. The one I won't hear is, there's too many teams in the playoffs. This is coming from the NHL that had 16 playoff teams in a 21-team league at one point. Like, you can make it work. They have before, and we count those Stanley Cups all the same. I think just to keep it interesting, because what happens with a play-in tournament is now the 6th seed becomes huge. So those 5, 6, 7 seeds, and maybe even 8 seeds, depending on the point spread, are really, really playing to get that 6th seed to stay out of the tournament. And now all of a sudden your 11, 12 seeds also have something to play for because they're trying to get into the playoffs. And then the 9, 10 seeds, if we do this the NBA format, are playing to get out of the 9-10 game. They want to get to the 8-7 seed. It creates all these fascinating races and all these fascinating variables. You still have a league where 12 teams aren't going to make the playoffs at all. And that's not even counting the next 4 who ultimately won't make the playoffs when they don't make the play-in, but at least their fan base gets to hold on to something, saying, okay, yeah, we're right there. We got there. And you make it balanced so the 7, 8 seeds have the advantage, because I think the NBA has it 9 plays 10, 7 plays 8. Loser of 9-10, done, go home. Thanks for coming out. 7-8, you win. Congratulations, you're in the playoffs. If you're a 7-8 seed, it's 1 win and you're in. If you're a 9-10 seed, it's 1 loss and you're out. Yeah. But you have to win 2 in a row as a 9-10 seed to get in, whereas you would have to lose 2 in a row as a 7-8 seed to miss.
I like that. Because that kind of balances it out.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, without getting into my whole opinion on whether we should do it or not, one stipulation I heard suggested, which I actually like, is that you can't be outside of like X number of points of a playoff spot. So let's say the second wildcard spot, if you're more than 10 points out, then you're not in the play-in tournament, and then there's like a different process. Like there's an adjusted tournament or something for fewer teams. And I saw that, I'm like, I actually agree with that in terms of competitive balance, because I think if a team is like a dozen points out and it was just a weird year in the East, for example, I don't think that team should be allowed to just get hot for a couple games and make it in. Might be a small stipulation, and I mean, for competitive or entertainment reasons, the NHL won't do it that way, but I think for competitive reasons, they should.
But then again, the argument is, even if you include that team...
Evan's gearing up. I know what's coming.
But even if you include, say, because the Red Wings this year missed, they were only 5 points out. But let's say they were 12 points out. Objectively, they're a bad hockey team.
Yeah.
I got news for you, Brad. They were 5 points out and they were objectively bad.
Yeah. So if you call yourself a playoff team and you lose to that team, and then again, the way this would work is you would have to lose to another team of similar quality. Like,
that sounds very Detroit Red Wings.
But it's also like it's going to be 84 games soon, and then these teams are going to have to play.
Tell us your opinion on it. Stop laying out a bunch of facts. What's your opinion on it?
Right now, I don't want it. I think half the league making it is perfect. When you get to expansion, I see the case.
Half the league still makes it. It's just a different path to getting there.
Yeah, but you're adding more games, and 84 games is already...
But again, that creates the incentive. Get that 6th seed. Don't settle for 7th or 8th. Don't start resting players near the end of the season because you're comfortably in the 7th seed.
Keep it as is right now. If you expand to 34 or more, do the play-ins. But I like the system. I like the NBA system. I like what Brad stipulated. So right now, don't change anything. In the future, I kind of am for it.
I think it's the stupidest thing.
I can't even argue with you. Like I understand fundamentally. Yeah,
I can.
I don't need to see. Some glue eaters attempt to make the playoffs. Like, I'm just not interested in that.
But the thing is, historically, the 9-10 seeds are not that far off the 8th seed. Like, it's not like everybody remembers that one year.
So what's the point of playing now 84 games?
Money. That has nothing to do with the play-in.
Tully's downstairs chiming in with his opinion too.
That's
now.
right. Yeah.
The 84 game has nothing to do with the play-in. That's the league just getting more revenue. And unironically...
No, Brad, that's still the math works out for the schedule.
But the play-in's even more money, because this is what I always circle back to. This is an entertainment product.
I'm not entertained by watching 9-10 seeds who trot out Elmer Soderblom on the first line trying to make the playoffs to get waxed. Like, I'm just not interested.
But if they get waxed, they get waxed. And if you're a 7 seed and you lose to those glue sniffers, that's your own damn fault.
They're glue eaters.
Like, yeah, it's an important distinction, Brad.
Fair enough. But it's an entertainment product. And you're not telling me...
It all stays in, by the way.
Everything I've said is on the record.
Yeah. Nobody's not going to watch these games. Nobody. And the argument I hear, too, all the time is fairness. Well, this isn't fair. What about the game of hockey is fair? We've let them go $1 billion over the salary cap to win a Stanley Cup every playoffs or however long. Dylan Larkin could get hurt in game 82. Is that fair? No, that would the luck of the draw.
Improvement.
Yeah, that would be.
20 games.
Yeah, but that's luck of the draw. Bad things happen sometimes. And when you're a Red Wings fan, bad things happen a lot of the time.
The one thing I'm scared of, though, is I think one of the worst things about the NBA is load management. And it is absolutely the right thing to do. And I can't stand it. And I never want to see that make its way into the NHL.
Why are we comparing the NHL? I agree. But why are we comparing the NHL to the NBA? The NBA is so boring.
Look at popularity in the United States, which is the NHL's key demographic. That's why they need to.
I think there's a deeper conversation about
Of course there is, but people love the play-in. Like, the NBA did the play-in, and their fan base went, this is awesome.
Right. And my ultimate point is, if you're adding 2 more games to the schedule and then the last 3 games of the season matter most, not that teams are going to be trying to thread the needle, because like if you're 7th to 10th, like you're struggling to be there probably. But at the same time, like, I don't know, like, it's at that point, it's whichever team is the least injured by game 84 plus 3. And so I think that's going to dictate
players pride themselves on being the sport of attrition. the toughest players. Oh, it's a little harder. That's bite me. Like, it's a tough sport. If you make it a little tougher, so what? That's why you get paid millions of dollars.
I don't know that I'm in bite you territory till about August when we're fully out of content.
But also at the same point to your thing, I'm with you. I cannot stand load management. As you can tell by my last one, I'm not about to cry over millionaire athletes having a tough time. But giving the 5 and 6 seeds a scare is going to prevent them from load managing. 7, 8, 9, 10 is now monumental where you land in that category. Those teams aren't going to load manage. 11, 12, 13 might not shut down players early in the season because they still have a chance. You want to see good quality hockey all the way up to game 84? This helps because it creates 3 to 4 different races towards the end of the season, and we don't get the monotony or the going through the motions for everybody but like 2 teams that we've had over the end of the season the last couple of years.
Okay, so I think the tired, wired, inspired meme here is the tired is do the play-in tournament. The wired is don't touch a single thing about the playoffs. I'm giving you a little advantage here, Evan. The inspired is do both the play-in tournament and the gold plan. So everyone all the way through game 112 or whatever they end up with, everyone is playing for something. And for those who don't know, the gold plan, overly simplified here, is so that when you're mathematically eliminated from the playoffs, then after that, all the points you accrue are measured against all the other teams who are mathematically eliminated or don't make the playoffs in the end, and whoever has the most points gets the first overall pick. So it is advantageous for you to keep trying till the end of the season. So the play-ins keep teams competitive, and the gold plan keeps the out of the playoff teams competitive, and boom, every game all the way to the end of the season matters, and everyone's trying, and that's solved right there.
And not even to be funny, that's the correct thing.
I don't know. On Miss America, like Miss Universe, like what the hell? Is it going to end world hunger too? Oh my God.
If they asked me in time, I could have fixed Iraq as well.
Yeah, that's right.
Like, obviously point totals affect everything, but if you look at like an average year, what teams aren't playing for anything at that point? That maybe the 3-4 seeds?
Yeah.
Like,
which at that
everybody
point
else
they
is
already
playing for
are resting, because you already are seeing the Florida Panthers and everyone else rest their players.
Yeah, exactly. And the races towards the end of the year will be more fun. I circle back to, it's an entertainment product. Everybody is more entertained under that scenario. Everybody, every fan base, every casual fan.
I'm not.
You wouldn't? Okay.
You wouldn't watch the games?
No.
Okay,
Between
Detroit
tired-
ever makes a play-in, we're locking him in a
I won't
closet.
watch.
He's not allowed to watch
I'm not watching 2 games when they go to 84. So if those are the 1 or 2 games, I will save them.
Okay, Evan, between tired, wired, and inspired, which one are you choosing? Because if you can add the gold plan and the play-in, you're not doing that?
Well, there's no option where I don't get to pick the play-in, right?
Well,
I have to take the play-in in this meme.
If you want the gold plan, you have to take the play-in. If you don't want the
I don't
play-in,
really care for either.
I'm really glad you exist, but some days it's hard.
Like, I just don't really care for either. Like, this was only a thing I put thought into when the Red Wings were a bottom 5 team in the league.
Oh, now they're bottom 7, so it's free of clear.
They're bottom 12, apparently.
By the way, next episode, I am going to try to find a sash. Miss WWP.
I was inspired. You almost convinced me to change my opinion.
Yeah, right. No, I didn't. Anyways, I think the last question is, if they expand to 34 or 36 or however many teams, does that change your mind at all?
Not at all.
So why is 16 the magic number? Because it's 4 rounds and...
The math, it just works out for the schedule, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Well,
I already think that there's not enough good... I think the quality of teams making the playoffs already isn't that good.
Here's a point to the quality of playoff teams down. This run of 3 Stanley Cup finals in a row for the Florida Panthers started with them as an 8 seed. When they upset the Bruins that first year.
Oh, and imagine they had to do a play-in and lost, and then we would have never seen the dynasty.
Honestly, great. I don't like the Panthers, so that would have been fantastic.
Like, funny enough, one of the biggest what-ifs in NHL history now is Brad Marchand if he scores on that breakaway for the Bruins.
I know, that's crazy to think about, and then he ends up on the Panthers. But
the hockey gods are real.
Every year, there's always one team that makes the playoffs that's just bad. But when you go over the last decade, how many How many 6, 7, 8 seeds have went on long, deep playoff runs? It is a lot more than people would think. So I think, yeah, there's always going to be outliers to the rule. Washington last year was like, okay, absolutely not a playoff team. But someone had to fill that spot. And if they had that play in round against whoever the 7th seed was, that would have killed them. And then Washington's playing Detroit, hypothetically, who they tied in the standings, that would have been the ultimate cinema. Like, there's no, okay, yeah, they had a better goal differential, but they had more ROW. Screw it, play. Baseball does it. You're tied at the end of the regular season. Playoff to get into the playoffs. And some of the best baseball games I remember watching were that game. Like, I'm okay with extra games. I'm okay with extra theater. I'm okay with whatever you want to call it. Even if you want to put in the points restriction, sure.
You know who doesn't want to play more games? Players.
Cool. You're getting paid millions of dollars. I don't care. God, do I not care how little they.
So
care.
the Red Wings make the play-in round. They were
They would have been the
seed.
10 seed this year, right?
Had
it existed, yeah.
They were comfortably in the playoffs. Who in this scenario? Who's the highest team that?
Ottawa. You go Ottawa,
So
Montreal,
if you're
Columbus,
6,
Detroit.
you would be in the play-ins, or 7.
I'm just taking the 2.
7, you would be in the play, and 6, you're
So
in.
you're 7th in the playoffs by 9 points.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, sorry. First wild card was Ottawa at 97. The second team outside the wild card, so in the 10th
The amount
seed,
of points doesn't matter to
Who
me.
was the 8 seed? Because 7 would have played 8.
it's Ottawa, Montreal,
Yeah.
97, 91 points,
There
and
you
then
go.
Columbus and Detroit, 89, 86 points outside of it.
Teams who it does in my hypothetical, it doesn't matter who the teams are. I'm talking about the Red Wings are in by 9 points above the last place team. They have to now play a play-in game. Dylan Larkin gets hurt. Lucas Raymond gets hurt. Now they're down 2 players because they have to play a play-in game. Now they can either win those 2 games or lose those 2 games. They're going into the first round or not. Even though in one scenario they were comfortably in and they just got injured in the play-in, or they won both those games or won one of those games. Now they have to play the first round after being comfortably in the playoffs, down 2 of their best players.
That'd be a risk, yeah. That
But
would be a risk.
it's hockey. They could get injured in game 80. They could get injured in the first shift of game 1 of the playoffs. It's the same end result.
Yeah, but my point is they're comfortably in the playoffs. These games were not necessary. They were ahead of the 9-10 teams by 10 points.
And that'll be the argument for a lot of GMs across the league to say, I'm not going to, that would be a piss off if I was, if Ottawa at 97 points was not one of the teams to make it when the teams behind them were 6 points back, 8 points back, and 11 points back, Ottawa would have every right to be pissed. I agree with you there. But if that's the agreed upon system, then it's kind of like everyone has to buy in.
And that's the thing. It's a universal system. So if you expand this out 30, 40, 50 years in the future, you're going to be the 7th seed as much as you're going to be the 10th seed. You're going to get hurt by it as much as you're going to get helped by it. It's just luck of the draw. Hockey is the most random of all the sports. Luck factors in so many times. How many times of those 97 points versus Montreal's 91 points did they get 3 extra points because a puck banked in off a defenseman's skate in the crease at the right time or something like that? Everything in hockey's, not everything, but hockey's very random. You have to accept that. Players get hurt all the time. The Red Wings, Dylan Larkin doesn't get hurt 2 Marches ago. The Red Wings missed the playoffs on a tiebreaker. He doesn't get hurt. Everybody on the planet agrees they're in the playoffs. Tough luck. Sucks. That's sports. That's life.
I'd rather it happen 10 games left in the season than 2 made-up play-in games.
As long as we're
at this point, I just want them to play a game that means something.
That's where I'm at. Okay. I'm sure that discussion is going to rage on. We're going to wrap this one up. And when we're back, the final segment here on the Winged Wheel podcast, back in for this.
We're going to overtime.
Overtime is brought to you by our Patreon supporters, patreon.com/wingedwheelpodcast. If you want to support the show, again, the bonus episodes, the bonus overtime, the giveaways, the Discord, all that and lots more. Again, patreon.com/wingedwheelpodcast. Let's take some questions from our patrons. Let's start with, I can't read that full name, but I'll just call him Pepperoni. It says, if we could clone a Red Wings veteran to help us get into the playoffs this year, who would you choose? Nicholas Lidstrom?
Boy, we could use a left shot top pair defenseman right now.
Wouldn't hurt. I mean, you could pay. The Red Wings are spoiled, right? Pick your favorite Red Wing. If that's what you mean, like Yzerman.
Well, they could use a top line forward and a top pair D. Probably get both out of Sergei Fedorov.
Let's assume they mean a veteran on the current Red Wings.
Like we're allowed to get a second one?
Yeah, Dylan Larkin.
Oh, yeah, obviously.
Yeah, it'd have to be Dylan Larkin.
Well, the argument has always been you can win a Stanley Cup with 2 Dylan Larkins, so let's take that very literally.
Yeah. Man USA Fanman Adams says, talks a lot about the acquisitions in the offseason and says, can we say anything but meh? And then says, seems to me that we are looking at third worst in our division ahead of Boston and Buffalo. Maybe. Might we snipe Pasternak off Boston? What would you give? Might you? Sure. Boston would have to really recalculate or continue to recalculate their rebuild.
Well, they're not rebuilding based on their offseason moves.
And what are you giving up? It would have to be everything.
Mm-hmm. That top 15 list that we just gave you, you go to the Bruins and you say, pick 7.
And it'd be worth it. Josh says, I'm struggling to understand why most people seem to be writing off ASP's chances at making the opening night roster. He's been extremely productive in 3 years of pro hockey. The Red Wings have no depth at right D, and Lane Hudson just showed how impactful a player like ASP can be as a rookie. Obviously, he needs to earn his spot, but if he looks good on NHL ice in training camp, am I crazy for thinking a roster spot should be his to lose?
It shouldn't be his to lose. Like, you don't pencil him in there. Can he get it? Absolutely. You got to remember, Lane Hudson's the exception to the rule. There are very few defensemen in the NHL who look and play like Lane Hudson or Axel Sandin Pellikka in general, let alone doing it as a 20-year-old. It's theoretically possible. I would even give it a better than 10% chance that Sandin Pellikka can do it. But it isn't close to 50-50. Like, he's got an uphill battle as an undersized defenseman. He's got a strong defensive game, but it's not an exceptional defensive game. So he's got a huge uphill battle.
Yeah.
He'd fit right in with the Red Wings defense.
Well,
Yeah,
a lot of them are just like have a huge uphill. They're not exactly battling. It shouldn't be his to lose just because, like, unless things are very surprising, you just don't want to risk the long-term hurt to his development, right? Like, it's about him, not this year's team, which sounds silly because we're like, oh, we want the Red Wings to make the playoffs. We want them to make the playoffs. But I just can't. You can't be willing to sacrifice a prospect as important as ASP. Like, you can't force the issue. Now, if he comes in and checks all the boxes, yeah, absolutely. I'm not putting up any artificial barriers. If he is playing well enough and he is, one of the Red Wings 4 best defensemen, we'll call it, to set a high bar for him, and he's not getting blown up physically, that spot should be his. But that is a lot to ask of a defenseman of his age and his size. It's not impossible, but you just can't risk it if he's going to come in and be kind of good but struggle, it's not worth it.
There's this saying that's been floating around hockey forever, and this is probably doubly true for defensemen. If you're big, you have to prove you can't play. If you're small, you have to prove you can play. Now, all the big defensemen that are going to be filling that role for Detroit have already proved they can. But
you see Justin Hall's goal in the Beauty League?
Yeah, wasn't that great, man?
Went in the net.
I love this. Like, he shot at 5-hole. Put him at first line left wing. But either way, Sandin Pellikka still has to prove he can.
Java says, if you could add only one position in a trade, would it be a top 6 forward or a top 4 right shot defenseman?
Top 6 forward all day. Like, I don't even think that's much of a debate right now.
If that was top 4 left shot defenseman, I would take that over the forward. But I think the forward right now, I would take. It would potentially change the game more. Where are you at, Evan?
100% on the forward, I think. And if we're talking like based on skill, not like a piano mover that's being injected onto the line because they complement those players.
Listen, we don't tolerate Justin Abdelkader or disrespect.
I never said that name. Check the tapes. I may have described it perfectly, but maybe even used his nickname at one point, but I did not say his name.
The grade 8 always gets the respect on this show.
Exactly.
Say whose name?
That's right. But yeah, it would be a forward for sure. I think the Red Wings could use another bona fide top 6 point producer over a right shot defenseman right now.
All right, last question here from new patron, Bookman Swash. Welcome to the Dub Club. Thank you so very much for supporting the show. Says, the last 2 episodes did an amazing job looking at what the roster might be capable of this coming season. One thing I haven't heard you guys talk about in depth is the PK. We went from a very average PK 2 seasons ago to last in the league. What happened? Isn't that the lowest hanging fruit? Gibson, Appleton, McLellan, full off season. Can that get us back to average? And what's the goal differential or point swing that might represent? Or is that a wash if the power play and the penalty minutes per game regress towards the mean? That last point is a really good one. They got a lot of power plays, and the power play was extremely efficient. You can't bank on both of those things being as high end next year.
Well, I think the most likely scenario is they wash out each other. I would expect the PK to be a little bit better than it was last year because it was unsustainably bad. But also the power play was unsustainably hot, so you got to assume a little bit of regression there. So if you drop 4% on the power play, but you increase 4% on the penalty kill, you're in the same spot. And I think something along those lines is the most likely scenario for this year.
Yeah, the players you listed, those should make a difference. McLellan, to me, is the biggest difference in his staff and just having the full off season. There's a lot lingering from, the loaned era, we'll call it. I don't know that I want to attribute all of it to that. It could just be that the players that were brought in that were supposedly supposed to help the PK just didn't. So we'll see how things shake out. But to me, if it's going to be a meaningful change, it's not that Appleton isn't the right guy for it. It's just that the meaningful change will come from McLellan, because I think you can have a really bad team and still have a good PK. It's I don't want to say it's an easy thing to do in the NHL, but the skill set you need isn't like you need Austin Matthews' shot or the Ovechkin sitting in his office or the playmaking ability of some superstar forward. Most players on an NHL roster can be a shutdown player, a forward, or a defenseman, and the Red Wings have just struggled despite having every excuse and ample opportunity to do better. So if it's fixed, it'll be McLellan, and I imagine we'll see at least, God, even if they're just below average, that'd be fantastic. All right. We're going to wrap up this episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast. Thank you all so very much for tuning in. Thank you for bearing with the off-season. Patreon supporters, you are going to have some more content coming your way sometime this week. I believe you get a double dose. Again, patreon.com/wingedwheelpodcast if you want to help us out. And if you want to support the show, but Patreon's not for you, that is totally fine. Wherever you get your podcasts, if you're looking at the new studio on YouTube or listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever, subscribe, review the show, give a thumbs up, give a rating, tell a friend. All of those are things that really, really help us out. To all of our sponsors, thank you so much. And to our name level supporters on Patreon, we could not do the show without you. Arjun Shankar, Eves Bartels on behalf of the Sarah Grand Foundation, Akefer, THL Champ, Samuel Soderholm, Icon, Glenn Brabham, Below Average Ball Hockey Goalie, Rain Dano, Sea Lion, Matthew M. Rice, Adam Rose, Adam Suiza, Admiral Matt S. The Cheesebag Navy, Alex Toger, Anna Sleeman, Asher Killian, Beer League Legend, Best James Bond, Bingo Bango, Butts Carlton, Carl, Brutina Nanaluski, CB55, Chris Black, Citizen High Five, Clip Clop Nene, Connor Scovey, Craig Kibble, Denny's Gamer Girl, Derek Enstam, DJ Denton, Eric Hill, Evan is 10 Ply, Give Blood Fight, Probert, Grand Rapids Girly, Griffin God Creatives, Hockeytown Matt, Hassam Al Kazem, Jay Gollum, Jacob Turner, Jeff Pridemore, John Ingalls, Jonathan Miller, Kaylin Wood, That's What I Appreciates About You, Kip Tira Jr., Mark Hernandez, Marty, Matt McKay, Mr. Kuzi, Now I Have to Learn How to Click on a Macintosh, Podg713, RA, Roy Donk, Sam Bankson, Slim Smitty Cards, Stephen Ortlieb, Wallman's Elite Dancing D, Went to a Podcast Night, Just Got a Pick with Brad, William, Wings Fan in Chicago, Eyes Are Plan Stan, Aaron Hudson, General Andy Bohan of the Cheesebag Army, AA Ron, All Motor No Hands, Ann Stanislavski, Antonio Gracias, Bellingham Massive Balls, Bex, Big Cheese, C.E. Hayes, Commander Ben Barron of the Cheesebag Space Force, Connor Layton and Corey Prida, Darren Fick, Drop the Puck, Dylan Larkin, Trade Sacrifice, Eric Nance, Evan Beckner, Evans Brown, Pomeranian, Falkness, brand new name level supporter, welcome to the Dub Club, Frank Stanley, Gene Sullivan, Grapsky, Griffey Boy, Jacob Marsh, James Pridemore, Johnny Page, Jeremiah Dobo, Jim, J.M. Rhapsody, Josh Yelton, Kevin McCracken, Quaz, Linda Hull, Lonnie Zone, Lucas Raitman, Matt Keeler, Mike Asher, Mitch Minier, Monica Lewin, Skibbity, Ophelia, As Good As It Gets, P, Nuss, thank you, Reed, Peter Swanson, Rosie Posey, Roy Mudbutt, Steven, that other guy, the Hodag, the Hat123, Trent Thorough, our good friend, Wings fan in St. Louis, Scott, and your second favorite patron. Thank you all so very much. Talk to you next week.
Thanks for tuning in to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Be sure to visit wingedwheelpodcast.com, where you'll find links to subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. You'll also find ways to support the show, like Patreon, official podcast merchandise, and more. And don't forget to follow us on X at Winged Wheel Pod, at Ryan Hanna, WWP, at Brad Crisco, and at Hockeytown Evan, as well as Winged Wheel Podcast on Instagram.